Fantastic, brilliant. I can see lots of people joining us this lunchtime, which is really great to see. Numbers are going up. We've literally just hit 1 o'clock. So what I'll do is just give it a couple of minutes before we start properly, just to allow everybody to have that time to join. I know it can be quite hard when you're rushing from one to another and thinking, have I got time to make that cup of tea? And if I can ask as well, just as you're joining, I think if you can all go on mute, which I think most people have, which is absolutely fantastic. And we'll have the panel on camera, but just to help the bandwidth if other people turn off their cameras, that would be great. Looks like somebody's set up some help from Gen AI to take notes. So that would be a useful summary of this call as well at the end of it. Okay, the numbers are still going up, so I'm just going to give it until 2 minutes past, and then we'll start.
We should have Hannah. Anna,
Yep,
hi,
looks
you
like we've
made
got
it.
Anna. Fantastic. Brilliant. The wonders of tech. We saw you coming in and going out, coming in and going out, but you're here. Absolutely brilliant, except we can't quite hear you. You can hear us all right? I can not, no. No, sorry. Probably trying that age-old technique of leaving and then coming back in. And so let's hope that we get Anna back. But in the interest of time, I suggest we start with today's webinar. So thank you ever so much for dialing in today. Let me introduce myself first of all for those who don't know me. My name is Catherine Marshall, and I lead on apprenticeship delivery in Lloyds Banking Group. I'm also the co-vice chair of the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network. So that's a group of employers and apprentices who are all working towards the vision of making sure that everyone, and we absolutely mean everyone, understands the benefits of apprenticeships. So some of you on the call will already be members of the network and will have had the benefit of meeting with other apprentice employers and sharing best practice to really drive that quality delivery, as well as inspiring and informing future apprenticeships through our school engagement activity. If you're not yet a member, at the end of the call, we will share how you can join that network of 2,000 plus employers and apprentices. So some of you might have dialed into these quarterly webinars before. The aim is really to help employers who are actively aiming to improve their apprenticeship programs and to learn from a panel who are sharing their experiences, insights, and best practice. Today's topic is all about how to connect greater numbers of care leavers into apprenticeships. And there are around 100,000 care leavers aged 25 or under in England. And by a care leaver, we're defining them as someone who's been looked after by a local authority or health and social trust for at least 13 weeks. And it's really important that we focus on care leavers. So due to challenges in their childhood, some might have struggled at school, many will experience homelessness, and there is a significantly higher proportion who are not in employment, education or training in comparison to the wider population. An apprenticeship can be absolutely an ideal opportunity for a care leaver to break through and start a successful career. And that's why we really wanted to focus on this important topic today. And so normally, like I said, on these webinars, I'm joined by a panel of apprenticeship employers who will all share their experiences. Today is slightly different, as well as some employers who are really passionate about making a difference in this space. We're also joined by an apprentice who can share her first-hand experience, and also a member of the policy team from the Department for Education. So without further ado, let's meet the panel. And first of all, let me go to Bethany to introduce yourself. So Bethany.
Good afternoon, thank you. So my name's Beth and I am an associate solicitor in the real estate litigation team at Eversheds, Sutherland. I've now been qualified for nearly 2 years, and I believe, although I am not quite sure, so I always like to caveat it, that I was the first care leaver to qualify via the solicitor apprenticeship route. So I will come into talking a bit more about my journey later on in this webinar. But I did a solicitor apprenticeship to qualify as a solicitor, and as of 2 months ago, I'm also sitting on the advisory board for the Care Leaver Covenant, which I know we'll also come on to discuss later today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. Joanna, can I come to you now?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining the call. Well, I'm here first and foremost because I've been inspired by Beth, and I will explain why later. My name's Joanna Hughes. I am the founder of Joanna Hughes Solicitor Apprenticeships, the co-CEO of City Century, which is a collaboration of 50 large law firms. So I suppose I'm here with representing 50 large law firms. I worked at a large international law firm for 25 years before deciding to dedicate myself full-time to championing solicitor apprenticeships because of their power to diversify socioeconomic diversity in the legal profession. And most recently, I've had a personal interest in raising awareness about solicitor apprenticeships among the care experience community because they have amazing talent.
Fantastic. We're really lucky to have you here today, Joanna. Thank you for joining us. Lucy, can I come to you now?
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Hunte, National Programme Manager for Apprenticeships at NHS England, but part of my remit is also around pre-employability, work experience, and just at the heart of everything is widening participation and access. So this is a real passion of mine to make sure that all young people get fair access to the amazing opportunities that you can find in the NHS.
Fantastic. And I think you've got so many different best practices that you'll be sharing on the course, so really looking forward to that. Anna, hopefully we can hear you. Can I come to you if you're back on the call?
I think I'm back, and I think you should be able to hear me.
100%.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
So sorry about that, everyone. So I'm Anna Butcher. I work for the John Lewis Partnership. So that's the brand which looks after Waitrose and John Lewis. And we run a programme called Building Happier Futures, which supports care experienced people to gain employment. And we are very much dipping our toes into apprenticeships and wider education and life skills opportunities as well.
Fantastic. And similar to Lucy, really excited to hear about what you're doing in John Lewis on the call today. And as I mentioned, we've got a policy advisor from the Department for Education. So Paul, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Russell, and I work for the Department for Education on how we can support more disadvantaged people into education, training and work, and how they can succeed once they get into those opportunities. And care leavers and apprenticeships is one of the areas I focus on.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks for coming along, Paul. So in terms of the webinar format, we do have some pre-prepared questions that we're going to run through, and then we'll have the opportunity to come to any questions that you have. If you have joined one of these webinars before, you will know that we really welcome lots of comment in the chat. And what we actually find is that, you have threads of conversation going in the chat. So you'll be answering each other's questions as well and sharing your experiences. So please do get involved by joining in the chat. And like I said at the start, if you haven't already, please go on mute and cameras off to aid the bandwidth. So Paul, if I can come to you first of all, can you paint a picture of the scale of care leavers across the country and also the current engagement with apprenticeships?
Sure, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, and as you said, we think there are around 100,000 care leavers aged 16 to 25 in England. And the care leaver definition is the one the government's used for some time to target support for care experienced people on those who are aged 16 to 25 but have been in care for at least 13 weeks, as you said. Some of that time must have been since their 16th birthday. And that definition includes people who are still in care. The government pays a bursary for care leavers who do apprenticeships. It's £3,000 paid in 3 instalments via the training provider. It's not taxed and it's not treated as income in any benefit claims. I would like to say we will pay the bursary in the new foundation apprenticeships, which we'll start to deliver soon, and in level 7, and extend the age limit for care leavers in both those programs to up to age 25. A bit more on the numbers. The local authorities report around 1,100 care leavers doing apprenticeships each year. However, the latest full year data we have for 2023-24 shows that we only paid 550 bursaries. And it's looking like roughly the same amount for this current year, academic year 24-25 so far. But we pay the bursary because it can make a low wage apprenticeship job viable for some young people who are living independently. We've heard how it can help clear debts, prevent homelessness, help with a range of costs associated with work, such as travel and clothing. So it really supports young people to access opportunity, but also helps employers make more of the talent available to them. And I really want to mention as well that we pay additional funding to employers and training providers. So we pay them both £1,000 in 2 instalments. For all apprentices aged 16 to 19. Many of you will know this, but I wanted to say it because I know not every employer does. And we extend that payment up to age 25 for apprentices who are care leavers. So there's a bit of an issue we have with those payments in that only 40% of employers who employ apprentices know about this additional funding, even when they're getting it. So we want, I think we can all do better on this collectively to raise awareness of the support available and use it better.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because it can make a real difference to that delivery of the programme, but also a real difference to the individual. So it sounds like there's a bit of a disparity between, the number of employers who are aware of it and accessing it. Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. So Joanna, if I can come to you now. So you are absolutely showing real leadership in this area. So championing both the social, but also importantly, the economic importance of connecting care leavers with apprenticeships. So can you share how your passion for ensuring care leavers acquire the skills they need to thrive has grown?
Yeah, I'd love to. I will explain how it started, and then, since I'm very much the new kid on the block in this sphere, I'd like to sort of share how, as you say, it's grown and how I've educated myself, because hopefully that will be useful for other people who are relatively new to this area. So, as I hinted up top, Beth was my original inspiration, although I have since met many other inspirational care leaver professionals. And it's quite remarkable for a solicitor in our sector to be quoted, I always say this and Beth hates me for it, but to be quoted in our lead directory, something called the Legal 500, and at not even 2 years qualified, Beth was described as exceptional. Nothing to do with her care experience, to be clear. This is pure hard facts, feedback from clients and peers. So as you say, with my economic hat on, I'm thinking, hey, how do I get, employers access to people like Beth? Because the talent and the skills that come from being care experienced are very well suited to our sector. Although, of course, Beth's story inspires in itself as well. Just a heads up, if you Google Beth's name, you'll find that the first non-sponsored result is a Law Society LinkedIn post, which had 3,500 engagements and 50 reposts. I think that's probably more than the history of Law Society posts ever. And that's how employers are inspired by people like Beth. So in terms of how my interest has grown, I was thinking about it before the call, and I think there's 5 key ways that I educated myself. First, I followed Paul's recommendation, researched the Care Leaver Covenant, signed myself up to that. So my company appears on the website, and I've already had someone reach out to me and ask me to help prepare a care experienced applicant for a solicitor apprenticeship, which I gladly did. To be clear, I won't do it for everyone, just for people through the Care Leaver Covenant. Secondly, if you need to educate yourself, you need to speak to experts. So I now volunteer for 2 care experience charities called Become, which is cross-sector, and Lawyers Who Care, which is specific to the legal sector. And in fact, today I've released a podcast with their CEO, Gemma Creamer, all about how you can get involved as law firms. Number 3, I wanted to put some effort in myself instead of just absorbing information. So I put on an in-person event in National Apprenticeship Week specifically for care experience young people. And 2 people on this call, 2 speakers on this call kindly gave up their time to attend and speak. Number 3, I read a lot. I don't know if you'll be able to see these books. These are all books written by care experienced people for people who want to educate themselves. And I just keep a lookout, I've been listening in because I'm a social mobility advocate mainly. And there's a House of Lords Social Mobility Policy Committee going on at the moment. And I've listened to all 11 evidence sessions. Pleased to say that the experience of care leavers have been discussed in 4 of those. Could do better. So I've suggested to the committee chair they might want to hear from some care experienced people. And then last of all, of course, key is educating myself through moving on up, but we'll come to that later.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joanna. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I'd encourage anyone to connect with you on LinkedIn as well, because you share a lot of details and information on LinkedIn. So that's a way that other people could educate themselves and keep up to speed with what's happening.
Thank you, Catherine.
Fantastic. So Lucy, if I can come to you. So Joanna mentioned about the Care Leavers Covenant, and I know that the NHS has signed this covenant, and you have some very specific targets around supporting care experienced young people into apprenticeships. So can you talk to us a little bit about the progress that you've made, but also importantly, the lessons that you've learned?
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched the NHS Universal Families Programme back in 2023. We had 10 initial Pathfinder integrated care boards, and now that's been rolled out across the country. And for us, it was, as one of the largest employers in Europe, really, really important to set an example and demonstrate that commitment to increasing diversity and inclusion and social mobility. I think lessons learned have been making sure that we identify the best partners to work with. So they're, making sure you engage with the local authority, but there's lots of fantastic charities out there so that we can make sure we're actually reaching the young people that we want to target. To work with good apprenticeship providers as well to encourage that uptake of the bursary. I mean, I think the stats around the young people that are not claiming it is a real shame. And I think, as an employer, it's really important to make sure that we create that safe space that they feel encouraged to be able to claim the bursary, and that they're not going to be stigmatized or, be labeled because of it, because I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And it's also around providing that end-to-end support. So it's not just about recruitment, but like once they're on board, recognizing the role of the corporate parent and making sure that they have access to kind of mentoring and buddying and support, because that's the big difference, is that they might not have that parent making sure they get up in the morning to get to work on time and little things like that. And also really, really important around making sure that the recruitment process is inclusive. So just little things like, does it state that a school uniform is acceptable for interviews, because they might not have access to formal clothes, and also around don't assume access to tech for online or virtual. So I know that travel costs is always a big barrier for young people, but a lot of employers automatically switch to virtual online recruitment, thinking that that would remove that barrier. But then you're assuming that that young person's got access to tech, Wi-Fi, a laptop outside of school hours. So again, it's just, thinking holistically around that. But yeah, and I think the biggest lesson that we've learned is don't assume. Ask. Every young person will be different in terms of the support that they need, and it's really, really easy to make assumptions. But I think, from the care experience young people that I've met that we've supported, they've all got a different story, they've all got a different journey. So I think it's really important that employers don't just kind of label, but actually understand what that individual young person needs.
Brilliant, brilliant. Some really great points there. And, you mentioned about thinking about the little things with recruitment, but they're just so important, absolutely so important. I love the reference to the corporate parent. Again, it's how do we actually look after these people? And your final point as well, don't assume, ask. So that links into what you said about creating that safe space. So people can be themselves, they can talk about their backgrounds, and we can absolutely enable them to be their best. And there's something else I just want to explore with what you're doing with the NHS, which I think is really exciting, just in terms of spreading the word around the importance of supporting care leavers into apprenticeship programs. So tell us a little bit about the procurement process that you have in the NHS and how you're using that to maximise further opportunities.
Yeah, so basically as part of the Care Leavers Covenant, we now include in all of our procurements the social values part, and all the local authorities, public sector organisations do as well. And the aim of that really is maximising opportunities to achieve social impact for care leavers through our supply chain, and that can be identified through the procurement process. So basically questions will be embedded into the invitation to tender, and we'll ask bidders to express how they can support us with those social value outcomes. So that can be, from committing to creating more employment opportunities, education and training opportunities, ring fencing vacancies in their organisations, or offering mentoring support, free access to money management, travel, events, whatever that might be. But they will be scored highly in terms of their bids and winning contracts if they really answer those questions fully and show a true commitment.
No, I think that's fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Lucy. Anna, if I can come to you now. So John Lewis has an ambitious vision to be the employer of choice for care experienced people. Through your Building Happier Futures programme, you're creating those opportunities to really help them unleash their potential. So tell us a little bit about the investment that you've made in this programme, but also the impact that it is having.
Will do, and thank you so much for having me to talk today. I think the first thing to say is we do have that very clear ambition. We want to be the employer of choice for care experienced people, but we're not competitive. So we also have an ambition to collaborate with other organisations. So anything we can learn from other organisations like Joanna, we've collaborated a lot with the NHS. We do, and we're up for sharing our knowledge, but also picking the brains of people who've led the way. So just to say that we're always open to collaborate, we'd love to. We learn more from the experts we work with in the field than we do from ourselves, because we are a corporate business. So learning about social value, similarly to what Joanna said, we're really passionate about that, and we get out and about to make sure we're doing things in the right way. I could talk about Building Happier Futures for an hour, but I won't, because we have 1 hour webinar. So Building Happier Futures is the programme in the partnership which invests in the care experience community. And what I'll really hone in on is the employability programme. So we have other strands, which include working with the government to feedback on what we see as an employer that would help. So things like more consistent free public transport is one example. And we have a fundraising arm. So we award small grants to charities and organisations who support the care experienced community, and we sell products in our shops to raise money towards that. But employability is the heart of what we do. That's what we're really proud of. We always describe it as the real heart of our work because it's the thing that's the most important to us. And that's because when we first did our early research, we saw that care experienced people wouldn't think about the John Lewis Partnership as a place they might want to come and join, not because they're care experienced, but also because they're probably young, and our business can have a reputation of being a bit stuffy. So what we wanted to say was, do you know what, if you come in and find out, you'll see behind the scenes that it's very much not stuffy. It's great fun. There's a very family feel to it. You can get, you know, make great connections through your work in the partnership. So what we wanted to do is say to care experienced people, you are welcome. And by doing that, we will learn from you. Your creativity, your talent can thrive in our organisation. And we do that by taking very practical steps, similar to what Lucy and Joanna have described. So things like offering work experience. We share interview questions in advance to reduce anxiety. We will pay for clothes. If someone's worried about clothes, we'll pay for transport if somebody's worried about transport. So we really take those practical small things that will make a big difference to someone exploring a workplace. And young people will tell us, you know, I met someone the other week who said, I'd rather not turn up at all than be late because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be late. So things like educating your workforce to understand that lateness doesn't mean rudeness. It could mean stress. It could mean anxiety. It could mean challenges that we may have taken for granted. So I was never late because I had my dad to drive me somewhere if I was running late. So those kind of things can really help understanding. So another thing I think it's important to share is that we educate our workforce. So we have some training. It's called Care Experience Awareness. And anyone who's involved in the programme of employability is trained by our charity partner, Who Cares Scotland, to be aware of what care experience means, to be aware that there are triggers in the workplace to be conscious of, but there's, you know, lots of things that people managers can do to help foster that sense of inclusion and belonging in the workplace. And that's just by understanding what it means and the things going on for those people outside of work. And then the impact we've recruited over 200 people since the programme began. As I said, we're dipping our toes in apprenticeships. Very excitingly, we're going to launch a new one in coming months in our innovation kitchen, which is where all the recipes in Waitrose get created. It's an amazing building with an amazing team of chefs. So that's a commerce chef apprenticeship that we'll be launching pretty soon. And we have a couple of people in the organisation on business administration apprenticeships at the moment. So we want to go bigger with it. We want to introduce more. We're really testing the water with it, but learning from experts. So Joanna mentioned Become. NHS have been really generous in their support and collaboration. We could not do this without the Care Leavers Covenant. So we do work very closely with some of the organisations who have already been mentioned. I can see something in the chat about sharing. I'm happy to share many things. So perhaps I can direct that via Stephen after the call. I'll capture anything that might be useful for the whole group.
Fantastic. And I think, you know, this is the benefit of these types of webinars. We can learn from each other, similar to how you have learnt from others as you set things up. And I think being part of that Care Leaver Covenant does enable that ongoing sharing as well. There were so many things there, Anna, that I loved that you were talking about. You know, that message out there, you are welcome, and we will also be learning from you. That is just so important. And I think also that care experience awareness that you're doing for the workforce involved with this. It sounds like you're penetrating it across all of your business areas, which is incredibly positive. Thank you, Anna. So Beth, if I can come to you now. So as you said at the start, you are the first person from a care leaver background to secure a role, a successful career in the legal profession through a level 7 apprenticeship programme. So tell us about your remarkable story.
Thank you. Yeah, so I got placed into foster care when I was 10 years old. So I've had both experiences living obviously with biological parents and then going through the foster care system. And I got to a point in sixth form where everybody was talking about going to university, and my outlet throughout my whole life was education. That was something that I'd always really focused on. It was an escape away from anything else that was going on at home. And so I've always been very academically smart, but that was never recognised by teachers. And I was not necessarily discriminated against based on the fact that I'd grown up in care, but you know, I was limited, let's say, by the teachers and the opportunities that sort of were presented to me in terms of what I could go on to do. And I kicked up a fuss, and eventually, you know, people realised that I were actually quite book smart. And then the focus then was immediately, well, okay, well, now you've got to go to university then. And I said I wanted to be a solicitor, and they said, well, yeah, the only option is university. And that itself brought lots of anxiety. I didn't have the home life that you know, some university students might have. I didn't have the parents to support that financial burden. I didn't have, you know, I had concerns about what that would look like for me in terms of moving out of my foster home. Would I then not be able to go back? What would I do during sort of non-term times, etc. So I started looking into what other options were available for me, and lo and behold, I found the apprenticeship route. Back in 2017, when I applied, there'd only been one cohort of solicitor apprentices prior to me, so it was a very new thing, and there weren't very many available at the time. I've always known I wanted to be very successful, so when I was choosing which one to apply for, I basically just found which firm was the biggest. I'm not afraid to admit that. And I only applied for the one, didn't really know what I was getting myself in for, I suppose, with how new it was. Turned up to the assessment day with 9 other individuals that had gone to private school, and one of them was in their second year of university and wanted to change paths. And I gave myself a tap on the shoulder and thought, well, you've got this far. And I ended up securing it. It was 6 years long. And like I say, I've now been qualified for nearly 2 years, and only in the past couple of years have I had the bravery, I suppose, to speak out about where I came from. Because I don't think that I would be 26 as of yesterday, and a qualified solicitor working in one of the top 10 largest law firms in the country, had it not have been for the solicitor apprenticeship. And that would largely have been due to personal circumstances. So I think solicitor apprenticeships, and just apprenticeships generally, are super important to give opportunities to people that might not necessarily have ever made their way through. There is still a lot of bias and stigma around people's lives and backgrounds, and unfortunately it's not always considered in light of recruitment processes. And why didn't you go to a Russell Group university? Why were your grades not as high as what they could have been, for example? And there's lots of personal circumstances that contribute to those things that aren't necessarily something that you would ever put forward on a CV or an application, for example.
Fantastic. And I said at the start, can you tell us about your remarkable story? And I just want to say it absolutely is remarkable. And you're getting lots of comments in the chat as well as a happy birthday for yesterday.
Thank you.
And you are a role model, and you know, you have had the confidence to push for what you wanted to do and what was right for you. And by sharing your story, you can give other people the confidence to do that as well. So thank you ever so much for coming along today.
Thank you.
Joanna, I think you've mentioned before around the Moving On Up network, and I think that network is making a real difference. So tell us why it's important to have these networks, both for employers but also for individuals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Moving On Up was one of the first things that I turned to. I know Anna Morrison, and it was obviously founded by Anna Morrison and Phil Warnock. And there are 3 main things about the Moving On Up network for employers and individuals that are incredibly helpful. One is the website, which has a lovely introduction video from Minister Jackie Smith, but also we have online meetings, which cost nothing. And in fact, the next one is tomorrow at 9:30. They're quarterly. So if you get in really fast, you might be able to sneak into that meeting tomorrow. And then thirdly are the newsletters. I adore, not everyone loves an email newsletter, but the email newsletters from Moving On Up are really, really good. They bring together everything that you need to know across government, across employers, best practice, all in one email. And I absolutely adore it. I think officially their targets are to work with employers and with government. And I find that liaison piece quite unique and really helpful. To increase the number of ring-fenced vacancies, which we've talked about before, to help employers with their training. And of course, key for me, always key, is to shine a light on care experienced apprentice voices, just like Beth. And of course, Beth has already spoken for them. But it's there's nothing, Lucy and I always say, there's nothing more inspiring for employers to hear from apprentices themselves, and we have so much to learn from them. And can I just add one thing which is in my mind, and certainly no one will be feeling this emotion to Beth after hearing her speak, but when I recorded the podcast with the care experienced aspiring barrister who runs Lawyers Who Care, she said, please be very careful when you're speaking about us and to us. Please do not ever pity us, because pity is the backhand of prejudice. So if I could encourage everyone to avoid that, not that anyone would ever dare to pity Beth.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point. Thank you, Joanna. And I think, Paul, you've posted in the chat as well the link to Moving On Up as well, haven't you? So everyone can have access to that. So Lucy and Anna, I think when you've been talking about your programs, you've shared some of the things that employers do need to think about. But I think it'd be good to go a little bit deeper into this. So if you've got an employer who hasn't yet thought about a care leaver program or how they can recruit care leavers into apprenticeships, what kinds of things should they consider? Lucy, can I come to you first of all?
So joining the Moving On Up network is a really good starting point, because you get to hear and share experiences with so many employers that have kind of already started to do this. The Catch-22 Care Leavers Benchmarking Forum as well, a really, really good place to hear from care experienced young people about what they want and how they would like to be supported. Make sure that you're engaging with your local authorities so that you know where these care experienced young people are in their virtual schools, and be able to talk to their personal advisors about opportunities, because I think that's, one of the biggest challenges I hear from my NHS colleagues is actually, we've got these vacancies, we've ring-fenced them, but where do we find the young people? But Anna touched on it as well, but I think, just share best practice with other employers and kind of, find out what works and what doesn't work, but really just utilize. There's a lot of really good resources out there as well. Touched on Amazing Apprenticeships. They've got some great resources. Moving On Up have got great resources, but also, again, I said this before, but work with good apprenticeship providers that are going to help you with that pastoral support for that young person. So it's not just about enrolment, it's actually making sure that they can complete and progress their careers. So I think that's really important. And again, we touched on the role of the corporate parent, and I don't think you can ever emphasize how important that is for that care experienced young person to have that support.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lucy. Anna, is there anything else that you would add?
So I think a couple of things that I'll touch on briefly. So we have an external advisory group who work with us. It's chaired by our chairman, Jason Tarry, on a quarterly basis. That external advisory group is made up of at least 50% lived experience, so lived experience of the care system, but also involves people like the CEO of Become, who's been mentioned. It involves our charity partner CEOs as well. That advisory group keep us honest and keep us on the right track to make sure we're not patronising. So we're not, pitying, that we are celebrating and going about things in the right way. We can't be without them. They really help steer us. And then secondly to that, we also have a young person's it's not necessarily a group, but when we're standing up new pieces of work, we go and meet with care experienced people, whether they work in the organisation or not, to just share their insight, their ideas, their experiences. One example we had recently that blew our mind was someone talking about timekeeping, and they have experience of the care system because they sought asylum over here. So they came over to the UK at the age of 14. In their home country, time is not a thing. they go about their day because of the sun and the routines that they had on their family farm. Whereas over here, we're obsessed with it. You have to be at this time and that time, and there's a real structure to it. And that just helped us, that cultural awareness of we never would have thought of that unless we'd spoken to young people. It blew our minds a bit. So bringing in lived experience for us is absolutely critical. We can't do without it.
Brilliant, brilliant. And that kind of like links into that earlier point about never make any assumptions. Ask, talk to people about it, find out about what's going on with different people to then understand what their understanding is. Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Anna. Beth, if I can come back to you, and from Eversheds' perspective, are they evaluating the success of their engagement with care leavers?
Yeah, so it's definitely something that's always going to be a work in progress, I think, and that is the case for any employer. Like I say, it was only a couple of years ago that I first ever had the confidence to speak about it, and there will likely be lots of people in not only my employment but in lots of companies that have this type of experience but perhaps don't feel comfortable enough to speak about it, or don't feel like it's important enough to the wider company to speak about it. But social mobility is one of our key pillars, and there are various schemes and programs that we have that start off as young as 14, 15. And I know that the most important thing is, I suppose, for companies, is talent acquisition, and in order to do that, you need to sort of approach that quite early on. So sometimes it's about a long-term plan and a long-term investment. So we partner with a school in Leeds, and we bring their year 10 students in every year for a debate day, and they just get a feel of what it feels like to come into an office. And it's a gradual, staged sort of involvement. So we start off with 30 students in year 10 who come in, and they have a debate day. They get to speak to lots of different people that work within the business, and that's not necessarily just solicitors, it's people who work in all aspects of the business. And then they go away and they speak to their teachers and they say, oh, I really liked that. I want to, maybe I want to consider this job, I want to do this. And then the year after, we bring them in and do something slightly different with a smaller group of children. And it's all about that constant engagement and consistent engagement, because it sort of ignites a spark in a young person. That's exactly what happened with me. I was in year 10 and got taken to Cambridge University, and I sat in on a lecture about law, and I was like, oh, well, maybe this is what I want to do. And so it's just all about sparking something within a child and then consistently going back. And because it's very easy for them to have a thought one day but then go back home where they might not necessarily see that in their personal life or have any role models or any insight into how to get that career. So it's about a consistent level of engagement. So hopefully then obviously you get to a year 13-year-old who might want to apply for an apprenticeship.
Fantastic. And I think, like you say, that consistent approach is really important. I mean, for everybody, we can ignite that spark about apprenticeships. Sometimes, they might go home, they might not have anybody to talk to about it, or the parents might be saying, actually, university is the route. Careers advisors are saying university is the route. So that continual talking around it and giving that information is so important. Beth, if I could ask you to think about what would you want to say to the employers on the call, and to leave them with a message around getting involved.
Yeah, I think it sort of links in with what Jo was saying earlier. It is something that needs to be recognised that there's lots of focus on increasing diversity and social mobility, and often we look at ethnicity, or we look at sexual orientation, or a wide variety of different factors, but sometimes we don't necessarily take into consideration someone's background, and that would obviously include being a care leaver. But it's also not something that a lot of people will feel comfortable speaking about, or will feel like they want to be open about. A lot of these situations are probably quite traumatic for the individual, and so I think it's super important to focus on it, but perhaps not labelling it as something as outright as, well, you've grown up in care, so this is specifically designed for you, and it's about putting it forward in a way where it's designed to help them, but some people don't necessarily want to emphasize the fact that they grew up in care.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point, and it's allowing the individual that time until they're confident, same as in your experience when you want to talk about it.
Yeah, it took 6 years for me, and waiting until I actually got my title of solicitor, so that no one, it was a personal thing where I could then never say that I got to where I was because I ticked any boxes, and it was more that I got to a place out of merit, and then after that it felt right to start speaking about it.
Yeah, but again, it's that balance about making sure that people are getting the right support and the financial support that's available as well if they are opening up about it.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thanks, Beth. And Paul, probably linked to that point around making sure that more people are aware of the support and the incentives that are available out there. What more can the Department for Education do to raise awareness in conjunction with employers like we have on the call today?
Well, first of all, I think it's really good that we've already got some job brokering going on in the chat. So I think someone from Barking and Dagenham wants to connect their young people to employment opportunities. So this is really good. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I kind of think the government could have done better in raising awareness of the additional support that we've actually managed to fund. So there's more work for us to do. A key thing for the bursary itself is that the training provider, for someone who's made it onto an apprenticeship anyway, the training provider is the fulcrum, if you like, the one organisation that can tell them about the bursary and give them the opportunity to declare their status and claim that bursary, and for it to make a real difference and help them complete their apprenticeship. And we know that not every training provider is doing that. So one thing we're doing from August in the next edition of the funding rules, we're going to ensure that we're going to tell training providers that they must make telling their apprentices about the bursary part of their initial assessment. And so that is one of the steps they will have to take during that initial assessment, and we'll be able to audit them on that. What we're trying to do now, obviously, is make training providers aware of that responsibility. So again, it's all about awareness. We hope that will make a difference and get the numbers up. I think I've mentioned in the chat, we're going to update our guidance on gov.uk tomorrow. It's going to be a bit more reassuring. Our previous or current version doesn't mention that the bursary is tax-free, so we missed a trick there, and we'll mention the new initial assessment rules as well. One other thing we're doing, the department has just developed a website with information all in one place on support for care leavers, so not just apprenticeships but everywhere, and I can put a link in the chat for that as well. We're getting lots of links today. But actually, I'd really like to get employers' views actually as well. For those that did know about the bursary and the additional funding that you can get to support young apprentices, how did you find out about it? And for those that didn't, those for whom it's news, what do you think we could have done to have informed you?
Well, Paul, I found out about it from you, thankfully. And in the NHS, we have a lot of employers that are actually employer providers, so they can get the training provider bursary and support the young person with their bursary. So it's a double win. But yeah, I think the information is out there, but I'm amazed at how many people still don't know about it. And again, it's around that stigma of not claiming it as well, which I just think is such a shame. It's there to support, as you mentioned, lobbied hard to get it tax-free, which I think is amazing. And I hope that we can encourage all young people to claim it if they're eligible.
Yes, yeah. And I think some of the points that you've made there around the training provider being aware of it, promoting it. Lucy, you talked about the training providers and thinking about the pastoral care that they give. We've got Deborah, who's from a training provider, saying that they're experiencing a growing number of care experienced apprentices and loving being part of their journey and helping them, to get those bursary payments as well. So I think it is around making sure that we are communicating it. Paul, you talked about having all the information in one place, which I think always helps, because when you think about apprenticeships, there can be quite a lot of different places that you can go to, and sometimes things can get buried within all the details. We have covered a lot. We have absolutely covered a lot. I've been trying to keep track of the chat. And thank you everyone for engaging with each other. We've had a number of different links shared on there. So Paul, you've shared the details about the bursaries. We've shared the details about moving on up. If anyone is available to register and then dial into that quarterly call tomorrow at 9:30. Again, another opportunity to connect and find out more. I think, Anna, a lot of interest in finding out about the training that you do for that care experience awareness. So lots of interest there. And also just, and I know we've touched on it a number of times, around people who are interested, employers who are interested, but perhaps need to be able to connect with those care leavers as well, and advice and guidance on that. And Lucy, I know you've touched on that with some of your answers. Joanna, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just because I spotted, having a little snoop at who's dialed in, that Clancy from Become is on the call, and she's my contact at the charity. And so I hope she forgives me for trying to paraphrase it, but some people on the call might associate Become with stepping into university, but they have an excellent new provision all about stepping into apprenticeships. And that's how I'm volunteering, by doing a webinar for people who might want to step into a legal apprenticeship. So if you haven't thought about Become before in the context of apprenticeships, please do.
Fantastic, fantastic. And we've got other people from different charities as well who are saying that they would love to connect with employers in different areas. So it's like you said, Paul, we've got a bit of a brokerage system going here, where we've got employers who are keen to make a difference and provide those opportunities, and the charities. And somebody also mentioned in the chat around getting the message out to schools as well. So again, that could be something that the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network takes on. So when we're talking to schools around apprenticeships, we're also mentioning about the additional opportunities for care leavers. So hopefully we have covered most of the comments in the chat. And Beth, you very kindly sort of shared your message to employers, which I think will have absolutely resonated and been heard. I'd love to just go to Joanna, Anna and Lucy, and if there's a final comment that you want to leave people with, that would be absolutely brilliant. So Lucy, I've seen you've come off mute, so I'm going to come to you first of all.
I think it's just actually embracing the opportunity and recognising the value that these young people can bring to your organisation. Yes, there might be some initial hurdles, but I think, by joining networks and best practice and sharing that with other employers, you can overcome them. And the rewards, they're invaluable. And listening to Bethany, she's just one example of thousands of young people. So yeah, go for it is what I would say.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lucy. And Anna?
I think very similarly to Lucy, just go for it, learn from experts. The other thing is there will be care experienced people who already work in your organisation. So create a safe space for them to talk to you, find out who they are, you'll learn loads from them. So for us, it's also about finding out who's already here and what more can we do to support them as well as the new joiners.
Fantastic. I think that is a really important point as well. It's not all about the recruitment just onto the apprenticeship programme. It's actually what happens afterwards and that onward successful career progression in that organisation. Fantastic. Thanks, Anna. And Joanna, if I can come to you.
So I'm going to give a really small but very practical point, which I learned yesterday, again, about educating yourself. If you're going, I'm always about capturing data. So try to capture data from your applicants so you can see where care experience for people are falling out in the process. But in terms of a tick box for people to reveal whether they're care experienced or not, the care experience CEO I did the podcast with said, please allow a textbook box underneath, because care experienced people are sick of ticking boxes. They sometimes feel that they're a tick box. So give them a reason, and say why you want to collect the data so that you can support them with mentors and specially trained people. Explain why. Just don't expect people to tick boxes without an explanation. But on a more upbeat, practical tip, find yourself a spokesperson and a role model like Beth.
Fantastic. What a brilliant point to leave us on. Absolutely. So I want to say a massive, massive thank you to our panel, to Beth, to Lucy, to Anna, to Joanna, and to Paul for really sharing your insights today. Thank you ever so much for everyone who has joined in. And you can see on the screen there around joining the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network, and just linking on from Joanna's final point there around finding those role models who can inspire others. That's what the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network is all about, because there are so many young people out there who are thinking about what they can do, and they need to have that belief that they can do it. So if we can show them the role models around how they can take those first steps into their career and start an apprenticeship program, then that can make the real difference. So if you're not already a member of the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network, please do get in touch and join this network. So thank you all ever so much for joining in this lunchtime, and look forward to really making a difference for the care leavers across the country. Thank you all ever so much.